Right, I'm doing one of these what's coming next presentations. I'm going to attempt to predict what we'll put in version 17 in the general area of the file system access functions that we added in 15. The text input and output functions, which also added in 15, and quad CSV, which we added in the most recent release 16. Right. And I should say that although I'm working on these, and it should therefore be quite easy for me to predict what's going to happen, this is the first time that the people that matter will have actually seen much of this, so it might not happen like this at all. This is my ideas. Hopefully by showing you them now, they'll be a bit more likely to happen. Okay, so 15.0, let's very quickly just remind you of what we added for what we call internally the portable file functions, various functions for accessing the file system. So we added quad mukdir to create directories. There's also a variant, an option which will create intermediate directories if they don't exist. Nexists simply tells you whether the name that you've given is a name in the file system. It doesn't tell you anything other than whether it's there or not. If you want more information, there's also ninfo, which you can ask for certain properties such as the size, the type. What else? We put nparts, which splits a name up into its constituent parts, the directory, the base name, and the extension. It doesn't actually have to exist, it's just parsing the name, although there is an option to make it normalize the name, which will include the full path relative to where the current working directory is, and an end-delete option function. Okay, and that can delete a file or an empty directory. All of those functions except a single name. There was some debate about that at the time we developed them. I think the biggest reason for that was simply that if we worked on multiple files or directories and something went wrong halfway through, we weren't too sure whether we should try and roll back or not. And ninfo has got an extra capability. It can do globbing or wildcard extension. So if you give it a variant option and then something like star.txt, it can expand that into all the matching files. So we thought that with all the functions accepting only a single name and quadinfo, you can use the two together and construct much more useful functions to delete many files. For example, as in there, quadinfo will generate the list of names that match that, and then quadindelete will go ahead and delete those files. So you don't need anything more on quadindelete. However, there's a really nasty gotcha with that. If there are no matching files, the end result will be a zero list of names. The final result will be an empty array, and in order to get the prototype for that empty array, endelete gets called. And if you're lucky, you'll get an error. And if you're very unlucky, something will get deleted. So, I have been playing with these. As I say, they're not definite for 17, but let me show you what we've got as enhancements to those. Okay. Right. Okay. So, this is a version of 17, a very early build of it. Do not be fooled by the fact it says beta release on there. It's not a beta release. Right, I'm creating a little function, mukf. All it's going to do is create an empty text file, just for the purpose of this demonstration. And so let's create 3 files, F1, F2, F3. Let's create 5 directories, D1 through D5. Notice that there's no each in this mukdir. It's accepting 5 names, which 16.0 version of mukdir doesn't do. So it's created all 5 directories. And then existing functionality, use ninfo, we can see we've got D1 through D5, those are the directories, and F1 through F3, those are the files. So we don't have to explicitly say wildcard each time. This is exactly the same thing for brevity, and in fact, I'll name that so that I can use it frequently. So there you go, exactly the same. Now, this is the case I showed you just now. There are no files called star.txt, and if I try and do that endelete, you'll see the problem. So ndelete in the new version will accept a list of names just like you saw in mukta. So this is an empty list of names. It knows it's empty, it doesn't do anything, and it's perfectly fine, there's no error. But if you're going to do that, you might as well add the wildcard option to ndelete as well. So this case, it's been given star.txt directly, and there's no matches, so it's deleted 0 files, and that's returned the 0 to tell you that. Okay, move on. N exists. This is nothing exciting about this. This is as it currently is. Pretty pointless thing to do. You give it a list of names, and of course they all exist, so it gives you a list of ones back again. It's now got this wildcard option as well. So if you give it the name directly, star, it now tells you the number of matches. So you get back 8 from N exists. You can give it multiple names as well, so let's see how many names match D, question mark, F question mark, and X question mark, and there should be 5 directories, 3 files, and nothing beginning with X, which is what it tells us. This isn't terribly exciting, but because we're doing this to all of them, N parts will accept multiple names and split them up. That's no different from if you had put an each in there. Right, so what do we got here? So we're going to delete a directory and the files beginning with F, so that should delete the empty D1 and 3 files, so I suspect we'll get back a 1 and a 3. Good. Let's put some things inside D2. So there's some files just going into D2, now another directory within D2, and now some files within that directory. So now D2 is not an empty directory. And I'll just run the Windows dir command, and you can see the structure, lots of things inside D2 there. And if I try and delete it, as you will know from 15 and 16, it refuses because it's empty, because it's not empty. But there is a new option now, a new left argument, say delete the contents as well. So it's deleted 8 things within D2 and just 1 within D3, which is D3 itself. Okay, and now you can see everything's gone apart from those. Good, right, back to the slides. Did that. So a quick summary, all those functions accept multiple file names. ndelete and nexist also accept the wildcard variant. There's no point putting it onto something like mukta. I can't imagine what use that would be, so it's only on those two. And ndelete can delete the contents of directories as well as empty directories. And I think that's the thing that people have been asking for the most. And it was that kind of overcome my fear of allowing ndelete to delete more than one thing. If we're going to support recursive delete, we may as well put all these other options on as well and delete multiple things. Right. So, no demo now because this is more speculative. Nothing's been done. Ninfo can return properties about files and directories, such as the size and the owner and that kind of thing. We're wondering about other properties people might want, and a few that came up actually about the contents of files. So if it were text file, how would it be? How is it encoded? What is its checksum? Anything else? These are different because you actually have to read the file, some or all of it, in order to answer the question. But if there are things that you want to know about files that Ninfo doesn't currently provide, please let us know. There are many places you can get in touch with us, but I've given you support@dyalog.com and they will definitely come through to me. Now then, where are we? On schedule, good. Right. Now then, another couple of biggies people are asking for. NCOPY. And we're getting close to the title of the presentation now, aren't we? So, I propose that you can copy one file to another, and it will make a copy of the file. If you give the target as a directory, it'll pop the file called file into that directory. Similarly for directories, you copy dir1 to dir2, you'll get a copy of the directory and all of its contents. This one is slightly awkward. I don't know that I like this. If directory 2 exists, it will put dir1 inside it, and if it doesn't exist, the name of the copy will be dir2. So I don't really like that, but so it might change. Why is nothing happening? Right. Similarly, multiple file names, so if you've got more than one on one side and the same number on the other, they'll just pair. So F1 will be copied to F3, F2 will be copied into dir. And this is a case where you've got many to one, so everything will go inside that directory called xdir, and there are wildcards, so the things that get put in there are all the matches. So everything beginning with F, everything beginning with D will all be copied recursively into that directory. What we have to think about is options to preserve attributes of the source files, whether the target file should have the original timestamps or the new timestamps and owners and so on. My suspicion is that there's not much that I'll do on that, but it's, again, that's something that people have asked about. So obviously, if you've got that for copy, we should have it for move as well. So there's exactly the same set of examples, this time effectively making a copy and removing the original, although obviously you can do it more efficiently than that. But that does beg the question, should this be allowed to move across file systems? Again, that's something I need to think about. And another thing people have been asking for is a way of creating temporary files. Don't really care what it is, perhaps even where it is on the file system, it's just somewhere to dump things. So they want, what people tell me they want is something to give them the name that they can create of a temporary file, something like that. And I think that would be quite nice. Actually, there is a very slight problem with it, so we'll not do that. The problem is, if I give you a temporary file name, by the time you do anything with it, it might not be unique anymore. So obviously, you don't give you the name. What you do is we create the file for you. And I've proposed that we do that by just omitting the name on encreate, and that will create a temporary file. We could be more clever than that. If you give it a directory but no base name within there, we could generate the name but put it within the specified directory. This one's fun as well. If you use this variant option, then what have I got here? And you do give it a name, then take the last character, and as many of those characters are there, and that will be substituted with something to make a unique name. So you can at least give a pattern to what you get. And of course, if you do that and you're too restrictive and they can't create anything unique, it will generate an error. And this one's even weirder. So the directory ... I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but something to indicate that I want you to put this file in the system temporary directory for applications, which will probably be /tump on a Unix system, and it's somewhere in application data on Windows and so on. Now, one person I spoke to who was very keen on having all of this said, yeah, but I still want to know where the temporary directory is. So, I've run ahead of myself. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to that. I haven't answered this question yet, but if you allow an omitted name, for example, and the name of the file is actually different, when you quad n erase the file, which should you give, the actual name or the name you n created with? Similarly, should quad n names return the actual name or the name that you told it? My feeling is it should be the name you told it, and the reason for that is that n erase is given the name that you created or tied, and that means I think n names should also return that name. But if you want the actual name, quad n info can give you that information, and so quad n info will give you the real name. Again, this is undecided at the moment. Right, back to where I was. Somebody wants to know the actual system temporary directory. So an IBeam, I couldn't think of anything better than that. But 739 is the obvious number for this, because as you can see it says tump, TMP. Straighten the 7, twist that round, and then flip that round. You can all imagine that, can't you? Don't applaud me, applaud Adam. Adam did that slide for me. There we go. Right. So that's the end of that text file, read and write. Coming up to another demo. And on time. Fab. Right. So very simple one. N put can write text files. People have been asking to be able to append to existing text files. An obvious thing to do. We didn't do it because we didn't really know how to deal with if there's already content in the file and you append text to it, what if that content is not text? Well, the short answer is, well, we'll just do what you said and get it right. And if you tell us to do something stupid, we'll do something stupid. It would be more stupid to check it every time. That would be very inefficient. And then n-get input user-defined 1-byte code pages. So there's millions of extended ASCII code pages. We only support one, Windows 1252. Let me demonstrate what I'm proposing. Again, I can demonstrate because I've been playing and have something working. Here we are. Whoa. Right. Okay, let us imagine that I have a file, a text file, which is encoded in Mac OS Roman. It's an extended ASCII character set as used on old Macs. Extended ASCII simply means that there's 1 byte per character. The first 128 code points are exactly the same as ASCII. The rest are a selection appropriate for the environment. And that's the selection they have chosen in that format. I haven't got Mac OS Roman support, so the only one I've got is Windows 1252. So I'll just try Windows 1252 and see what I get. And not do that, because that'll start me again. Unfortunately, I get a translation error. Let's have a look and see why that should be. So Windows 1252 is another extended ASCII character set. It has a weird, I don't know why they did this, they left some holes. There is nothing defined at these 5 character positions. And if we happen to look at this file, look at some of the bytes in it, you can see there's an 8D there. And 8D, I think is that one, has no definition in Windows 1252, so there's nothing I can do with that byte, so it gives a translation error. If we go back to Mac OS Roman, 8D is C cedilla. It would appear, sorry, it's very small, it's a C cedilla. So let's have another go at reading this file. The Unicode organization website is very handy. It gives us, oh, it's tiny, isn't it? Right. It gives us tables of all the mappings. This is the one for Mac OS Roman. Byte 0 maps to the Unicode code point 0, and so on and so forth. And what did I say that other one was? 8 something? 8D, 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 here we go. It maps to E7 in Unicode, and it's a C cedilla. So that's a very useful table. Let's play with it. This is some Quad S magic. Don't look at it too hard. The point is, I've taken the contents of that web page and I have generated a 256 element map, which is the byte value, the file byte values starting at 0 and the corresponding Unicode code points. And now with those that mapping, instead of providing the name of a text file encoding, I've put that mapping instead. And now I can read the file. And there is the C cedilla that was giving us the problem. Okay. Right. That's kind of useful. If you know what the encoding is. If you have no idea what it is, you might also want to use Windows 1252, but can't if you hit those characters. So UCS1 is simply the first 256 Unicode code points. If you've no idea what a text file is, we can still generate a map. UCS1 will read a file without giving a translation error. We might read in junk, and in this case, that has happened. The C cedilla is missing in this case. But at least we've got the file in. It's a step further forward to analyze your file. So that might be a useful thing. If you've got an unknown file, you can at least read it without an error. Okay, that's the end of the demo, but not the end of the presentation. So let's carry on. Done that one. Okay, and the final thing, slightly ahead of schedule, is Quad CSV, which only came in the most current release. So CSV, not Quad CSV, the CSV format has grown up over years, and there isn't a standard definition. There's been an attempt at a standard definition, but there are so many other users of it that don't follow that standard definition. And so when we did Quad CSV, we tried to provide a bunch of options to enable you to read pretty much, or create pretty much any CSV file in your preferred format. We've been told of cases where we haven't been able to do that, so we need to add some additional support. The most important one is how we deal with escaping. So in this line, this is supposedly a line from a file which we're going to read, a CSV file. We have got 4 fields. There's the first one, the second one. The third one contains a comma, so it's been quoted. And the fourth one contains a quote, so it also has to be quoted with a double quote. And that's the only format that Quad CSV supports, and it's pretty much what most applications use. But some people have said it's not good enough. So variants of that may include the following. These have been sort of idly suggested. Why, for example, do the quotes have to go at the ends of the fields? Why can't you put them in the middle? So in this case, I've escaped the comma, but not the entire field. Similarly, I've escaped a part of this field. Somebody's mentioned that, but I don't know of any actual need for it. So one of the purposes of this is to find out exactly what is needed. This one, however, somebody has said they absolutely must have. They can't use CSV at the moment. Instead, if you have a quoted field that contains a quote, instead of double quoting, you need to / escape it. So we need to possibly define that one. This one is very similar. If you want to quote within a field, then don't quote escape the whole thing. I have no idea how you put a quote at the beginning of a field with this format, but somebody has said they absolutely must have this. This one has always been my favourite, and nobody wants this, but I'm going to put it up anyway. In fact, the 16.0 interpreter does support this format, except you can't switch it on, but the code is there. This is a kind of a Unixy kind of escape. It's used in some Unix files. You just / escape any character which would otherwise cause problems. In fact, there's no need to / escape that. And this one is trying to show you, notice it's using semicolons, it's trying to show you that some people just want the ability to switch off this entire mechanism. They will never use in their file the separator. Therefore, everything else is actual data. But what we really need to know is the full list of what is needed by you people. So please send them in, again, to support@dyalog.com, and we will make sure that we add support for all of them. One more CSV thing, less important, but ragged file. So that's not a ragged file. This one is. The first one has got an even same number of columns on every line. The third one, the second one, has got an uneven, and we kind of assume that if there are too few, that you've got commas at the end to give some empty fields. And that is supported, that's absolutely fine. The problem is, what happens is that when you don't explicitly tell Quad CSV the number of columns that are in this file, it uses the first line to work it out. And in this case, it works out as 3. And then when it hits this fourth one, it says, oh, that's not right. So you have to explicitly tell it. In this, well, I can read the first file like that with just saying that the type of all columns is 4, which means it could be numeric or alphanumeric. But in the second example, I can only read it like that, by explicitly telling it that there are 4 columns, each of type 4. And some people would like me to be able to infer this. It's actually quite a significant change to the code to do it, but if I can, I will do that. A couple more. I was asked this week if we could define another type. I showed you that 4 just now. A code that means that the field should be numeric, or it could be omitted, but it shouldn't be alphanumeric. And if it gets an alphanumeric field, it should be empty. It should be errored. And this is an interesting one. We've sold this as a high-performance CSV reader, and that probably we made our own problems with that, didn't we? Most people think it performs well, but some people really do not. So I'm going to have to look at specific cases that people have mentioned and see if I can find out that there's some funny glitch going on or something, or it's just that we've set the wrong expectations. So, there we go. Those are my hopes and plans for 17, some of which I'll say I've done, some of which could get ripped out after this meeting when I'm told how bad they were. But what they were was multi-file options, including globbing and recursive delete for those functions. A couple more functions. It's missing from the slide, isn't it? Look at that. It should also say encopy and nmove. Additional code pages on nget and nput, an append option on nput. Now they're all nicely written in black. That's why this one's further down. These get grey now because they're less likely to happen, I should think. And then temporary files even greyer. And then finally, I think quad CSV will be the last thing I come to, unless people say otherwise. And if you do want to say otherwise, that's my business card. Those are 3 ways of getting in touch with me. We do all read the forums if you don't want to contact us directly. Otherwise, there's a couple of email addresses. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Questions? A short question.
Yeah.
I've used quad CSV recently and had a problem where the length of the cell is limited, so it fails because the content of a specific cell is too large.
It's too long.
So what is the limit on the cell?
You know, I wondered if anybody would find that, because I thought it's a text file. You can't edit text files that have got really long lines. I think it's 4K. There is a limit because it reads it into a fixed length buffer, so I will have to address that.
It's a good place for Dyalog employees to catch up on design meetings they missed.
Yes.
Are you proposing that quad n names might return duplicate rows in the case of temporary files?
Yes. If we go with the idea that n names will give you the name that you give it as opposed to the actual name, and that could be an argument for not doing that.
Yeah, it might be better if you just filled in the pattern in what you gave it.
Yes, we haven't, and this is the kind of problem we have to sort out, so we haven't yet worked that out.
Yes, we've time for one more, just short question.
I get the impression that one of the design goals here is to let you write native file expressions that are in some sense portable across operating systems.
That's exactly, I mean, yes, it's a convenience, but it's principally to make sure that you can write this code without.
One of the areas that I have problems with, you know, is like, okay, I've compiled something and I want to generate, well, the temp file thing is good, but I want to generate an output file for the compiler's output, as an example. Right. Or I want to say, well, I want to run a benchmark over there and give it a relative path, but for various reasons I need the full path. So I have to take a path name that I can determine and a file name that I'm maybe creating, and I need the slash or backslash. And that is host dependent. So what I do today is, you know, I've got this silliness where I generate the thing by peeking and seeing what kind of operating system I'm running. If I'm running a normal operating system, I'll use slash. If I'm running an abnormal operating system, I'll use backslash.
With these portable file functions, we kind of accept backslash or forward slash, and we always put forward slashes out because forward slashes work at the OS level on Windows, and we thought that's great. Everybody use forward slashes; it will be portable. And we've had, it is a problem if you are invoking Windows commands like on its command line with the wrong slashes, and we're aware of that problem. And at the moment, we haven't worked out what we're going to do. But it is a problem that actually on Windows we do need to let people know that backslash is the directory separator. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.